The shot of a pistol pierced the bitter silence of Cottonwood Springs, Wyoming Territory, 1876, causing Katherine Hayes to flinch as her father's drunken voice boomed through their modest farmhouse. Take her and that worthless patch of land. I don't need either." Her father's weathered hand gripped her arm so tightly she feared it might bruise, thrusting her toward the tall stranger whose cold eyes assessed her like cattle at auction. Katherine, barely 19, stood frozen in disbelief. The stranger, a man named Silas Turner, had come to collect a gambling debt, but rather than taking her father's money, he was taking her, along with the small plot of land that had been meant for her dowry. "Pa, please," Katherine whispered, her voice trembling as tears threatened to spill. "You can't mean this." Her father wouldn't meet her eyes, his attention fixed on the whiskey bottle clutched in his free hand. "Deal's done, Kat. You're his problem now." Silas Turner's thin lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Get your things, girl. We leave at dawn." That night, Katherine cried silently into her pillow, packing her meager belongings by moonlight. Her mother had died 3 winters ago, and her father had steadily descended into gambling and drink. Now he had gambled away his own daughter to a man she'd never met before today, a man who owned half the businesses in Cottonwood Springs and had a reputation for ruthlessness. As the first light of dawn painted the eastern sky, Katherine stood on the porch of the only home she'd ever known. Silas Turner waited impatiently atop his horse, leading a second mount for her. "Ready to go, Mrs. Turner?" he asked coldly. "We're not married," Katherine replied, clutching her small bundle of possessions. "Details," Turner said dismissively. "The preacher will handle that when we reach my ranch. Your father signed the papers. You belong to me now." The words struck Katherine like physical blows. She belonged to no one. But with nowhere to go and no money to her name, she had little choice but to mount the horse and follow Turner away from everything she had ever known. They had ridden for nearly 2 hours when the sound of approaching hoofbeats made them pause. Katherine turned to see a lone rider approaching fast, dust billowing behind him. "Turner," the rider called, his voice carrying across the open prairie. Silas Turner's hand moved to his pistol. "Wade Wilson," he muttered. "The fool never knows when to mind his own business." Katherine watched as the rider drew closer. Wade Wilson sat tall in his saddle, his broad shoulders squared beneath a worn leather vest. His face was partially shadowed by his hat, but she could see a strong jaw dusted with stubble and eyes that burned with determination. "What business do you have interrupting my journey, Wilson?" Turner demanded as Wade pulled his horse to a stop before them. "Heard about your little poker game with Hayes," Wade said, his gaze shifting briefly to Katherine before returning to Turner. "Seems mighty convenient that an experienced gambler like yourself would win everything from a drunk who can barely count his fingers." Turner's face darkened. "The game was fair." "Fair as a rattlesnake in a henhouse," Wade countered. "I'm offering to buy the land and the lady's contract." Katherine's heart leaped at the possibility of escape, though she bristled at being discussed like property. Turner laughed. "Not for sale, Wilson. The Hayes land connects to my northern pasture. Been trying to get it for years. The girl is just a bonus." Wade's jaw tightened. $500, cash for both. I paid $20 for the land in that game. Then you're making a profit. Take it or leave it." Turner studied Wade for a long moment. Katherine held her breath, afraid to hope. $1,000, Turner finally said, "and you've got yourself a deal." $750, Wade countered. "That's my final offer." After what seemed an eternity, Turner nodded. "Done, but you're a fool, Wilson. That land's barely worth $100, and the girl—" He looked at Katherine with dismissive eyes. "Well, I doubt she's worth the trouble." Katherine's cheeks burned with humiliation as Wade counted out bills from a leather pouch and handed them to Turner, who then produced 2 wrinkled papers from his saddlebag land deed and what appeared to be some sort of contract with her father's shaky signature. "She's your problem now," Turner said, echoing her father's words from the previous day as he pocketed the money and wheeled his horse around. "Hope she's worth it." As Turner rode away, Katherine found herself alone with Wade Wilson, a man she knew only by reputation, a successful rancher who kept mostly to himself, occasionally bringing cattle to market in Cottonwood Springs. "Why?" she asked when Turner was out of earshot. "Why would you pay so much?" Wade's expression softened slightly as he looked at her. "No person should be traded like property, Miss Hayes, especially not to a snake like Turner. So what happens now? Am I your property instead?" The word tasted bitter on her tongue. Wade shook his head firmly. "No, madam. That paper doesn't mean a thing to me except that it kept you from Turner. You're free to go wherever you please." Katherine laughed bitterly. "And where would that be? My father gave me away like an unwanted horse. I have nowhere to go." Wade seemed to consider this for a moment. "I have a proposition then. I need help at my ranch cooking, cleaning, tending the garden. It's honest work with fair pay. You can stay until you decide what you want to do next." Katherine studied him, searching for deceit in his eyes but finding none. "Why would you help a stranger?" "My mother taught me that a person's character is measured by how they treat those who can offer them nothing in return." He offered a small smile. "Besides, I've been eating my own cooking for 2 years. Another month and I might not survive." Despite everything, Katherine found herself returning his smile. "I'm a good cook." "Then we have an arrangement," Wade said, extending his hand. "Temporary employment, nothing more." Katherine hesitated only briefly before shaking his hand. "Temporary," she agreed. They rode side by side as the sun climbed higher in the sky, heading toward the Wilson Ranch. Katherine didn't know what awaited her there, but for the first time since her mother's death, she felt something she hadn't expected: hope. Wade's ranch came into view as they crested a small hill, a sturdy 2-story house with a wide front porch, a large barn, and several outbuildings spread across a valley nestled between rolling hills. Cattle grazed in the distance, and a small creek wound through the property. "It's beautiful," Katherine said softly. "It's home," Wade replied with undisguised pride. "Been building it up for 5 years now." As they approached, a young man emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked to be about 17, with sandy hair and a lean frame. "That's Daniel," Wade explained. "Ranch hand, good kid. His father worked for me until pneumonia took him last winter." They dismounted in front of the house, and Katherine felt suddenly self-conscious about her dusty dress and disheveled appearance. "Daniel," Wade called, "this is Miss Hayes. She'll be staying with us for a while, helping around the house." Daniel nodded politely. "Madam, Katherine, please," she insisted, unused to such formality. "I'll show you to your room," Wade said, carrying her small bundle inside. "It's not much, but it's clean." The house was simply furnished but tidy. Wade led her upstairs to a small bedroom at the end of the hallway. "This was my sister's room," he explained, setting her bundle on the bed. "She moved to Denver last year after she married." Katherine looked around at the simple but comfortable furnishings: a bed with a handmade quilt, a small dresser, a washstand with basin and pitcher, and a rocking chair by the window that overlooked the valley. "It's lovely," she said sincerely. "Thank you." Wade nodded, suddenly seeming uncomfortable. "Well, I'll let you get settled. Kitchen's downstairs if you're hungry. We usually eat supper around 6. After he left, Katherine sat on the edge of the bed, the events of the day washing over her. Yesterday she had been Katherine Hayes, daughter of a failing farmer. Today she was. What? Not Katherine Turner, thank God. Not really Katherine Hayes anymore either. Just Katherine, trying to find her footing in a world that had shifted beneath her. She washed her face in the basin, changed into her cleanest dress, and went downstairs to explore her new temporary home. The kitchen was large and well-equipped, though it showed signs of bachelor living: coffee stains on the table, dishes stacked haphazardly, a layer of dust on the upper shelves. Katherine rolled up her sleeves. If she was to earn her keep, she might as well start now. By the time 6 o'clock approached, Katherine had scrubbed the kitchen to a shine, inventoried the pantry, and prepared a simple but hearty supper of fried potatoes, beans, and cornbread using the supplies she'd found. Wade and Daniel came in from the fields, stopping short at the kitchen doorway. "Something smells mighty good," Daniel said, his eyes widening at the sight of the set table and steaming food. Wade said nothing, but Katherine caught the surprise and something else: appreciation. perhaps in his eyes as he washed up at the pump by the back door. "It's just simple fare," Katherine said as they sat down. "Once I know what supplies you have and what you like, I can do better." "This looks like a feast to us," Wade assured her. "Thank you." They ate mostly in silence, both men clearly hungry after a day's work. Katherine found herself studying Wade when he wasn't looking the way his strong hands held his fork, the crow's feet at the corners of his eyes that suggested he smiled more than he had in her presence, the way he thanked her again when he finished eating. "That was the best meal I've had in a long time, Miss Hayes," he said, pushing back from the table. "Katherine," she corrected gently. "Katherine," he repeated, and the sound of her name in his deep voice sent an unexpected warmth through her. Over the next few weeks, Katherine settled into life at the Wilson Ranch. She cooked, cleaned, mended clothes, and even started a small kitchen garden. The work was hard but satisfying, and for the first time in years, she felt useful and appreciated. Wade was often busy with ranch work, but Katherine noticed he made time each evening to thank her for dinner and ask about her day. Sometimes they would sit on the porch afterward, watching the sunset while he told her about his plans for the ranch or stories from his cattle drives. She learned that he had come west from Missouri after the war, determined to build something of his own. He had started with almost nothing, just a few $100s and a dream, and worked as a cowhand until he could afford to buy his own small parcel of land. Year by year, he had expanded until the Wilson Ranch was now one of the most prosperous in the county. One evening, about a month after her arrival, Katherine found Wade sitting alone on the porch steps, staring out at the darkening landscape. "May I join you?" she asked. He nodded, shifting to make room beside him. "Just watching the storm coming in." In the distance, lightning flickered among purple-black clouds and the air hung heavy with the promise of rain. "I've always loved thunderstorms," Katherine admitted. "My mother and I used to sit on our porch and count the seconds between lightning and thunder to see how close the storm was." Wade smiled. "My sister and I did the same." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the lightning draw nearer. "I saw Turner in town yesterday," Wade said suddenly. "He asked about you." Katherine tensed. "What did he want? To know if I'd tamed you yet?" Wade's voice held disgust. "Some men should never be allowed near decent women." "Thank you," Katherine said softly, "for what you did that day." "I never properly thanked you." Wade turned to look at her, his expression serious in the fading light. "You don't need to thank me for doing what any decent man would do." "But most men wouldn't have," Katherine pointed out. "Most would have minded their own business." "Or worse, they would have," she broke off, unable to finish the thought. Wade's hand found hers in the gathering darkness, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "You're safe here, Katherine, I promise you that." The touch of his hand sent a flutter through her chest that had nothing to do with fear. For a moment, neither of them moved or spoke, connected by that simple touch as lightning flashed closer and the first heavy drops of rain began to fall. "We should go inside," Wade said finally, releasing her hand as thunder rumbled overhead. Katherine nodded, suddenly aware of how improper it was to be sitting alone with him in the dark. She was, after all, his employee, nothing more. But as she lay in bed that night, listening to the rain drumming on the roof, Katherine couldn't help remembering the feeling of Wade's hand holding hers, and wondering what it might be like if he were to hold her in his arms. The next morning, Katherine woke to shouting from the yard. She rushed to the window to see Wade and Daniel mounted on horses, with 3 other riders facing them. Even from a distance, she recognized one of the men, Silas Turner. Katherine dressed quickly and hurried downstairs, reaching the porch just as voices rose in anger. "That land is rightfully mine, Wilson," Turner was saying. "Hayes had no right to stake it in that game. The deed was in his wife's name, not his." "Then you should have checked the papers before you accepted them," Wade replied coolly, "and certainly before you sold them to me." Turner's face darkened. "I want my money back, $750. "The deal's done, Turner, you said it yourself." Katherine stepped forward, drawing the attention of all 5 men. "What's happening?" Turner's eyes narrowed when he saw her. "Well, if it isn't the Hayes girl." "Looking mighty comfortable in Wilson's house, aren't you?" Miss Hayes works for me, Wade said sharply, and she's not part of this discussion. Oh, but she is, Turner insisted. Because if that land deal isn't valid, then neither is my claim on her. Which means Wilson has no right to her either. No one has any right to me, Katherine said, her voice stronger than she felt. I'm not property to be traded. Turner laughed, an ugly sound. Your pa seems to think differently, girl, and the law's on my side. You'll find no judge in this territory who'll enforce a contract trading a human being, Wade countered. Now get off my land before I have Daniel fetch my shotgun. Turner glared at them both but finally turned his horse. This isn't over, Wilson, not by a long shot. He looked at Katherine with a smile that chilled her. I'll be seeing you again, Miss Hayes. As Turner and his men rode away, Katherine's knees weakened and she gripped the porch railing for support. Wade dismounted quickly and came to her side. Are you all right? What did he mean about the land? She asked, ignoring his question. Wade sighed. Your mother's name was on the deed, not your father's. When she died, it should have passed to you, not him. He had no right to gamble it away. Then, the land is mine? Katherine asked, stunned. Legally, yes. But Turner will fight it, and these matters can get complicated. Wade ran a hand through his hair. I should have told you sooner, but I only confirmed it yesterday in town when I had the lawyer check the records. Katherine felt a surge of anger. So you've known all this time that the land might be mine, and you said nothing? I suspected, but I wasn't sure, Wade admitted, and I didn't want to give you false hope. False hope, Katherine laughed bitterly. You paid for land that might not have been Turner's to sell. You paid for a contract that you yourself said was unenforceable. Why would you do that unless? She stopped as realization dawned. You wanted the land, just like Turner. Wade's expression hardened. That's not fair, Katherine, isn't it? You said the Hayes land connects to your northern pasture, just like Turner wanted it for his. She stepped back from him. What am I to you, Wade Wilson? An inconvenient addition to a land purchase, a servant to cook your meals and clean your house. You know that's not true, Wade said quietly, but Katherine was too upset to listen. I think I need to go into town, she said. I need to speak with this lawyer myself. Katherine, please, I've saved some of my wages, she continued as if he hadn't spoken. I can pay for a room at the boarding house. Wade's jaw tightened. At least let me drive you in the wagon. It's a long walk. Katherine wanted to refuse out of pride, but practicality won out. Fine. The ride to town was silent and tense. Katherine stared straight ahead, trying to sort through her jumbled emotions. She felt betrayed, but a small voice in her mind argued that Wade had saved her from Turner and given her a safe place to stay. Was his interest in the land really so terrible? In town, Wade pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the lawyer's office. I'll wait for you, he said as she climbed down. That's not necessary, Katherine replied stiffly. Turner's in town, Wade reminded her. I'm not leaving you alone, Katherine wanted to argue but knew he was right. She nodded curtly and entered the lawyer's office. An hour later, she emerged with a clearer understanding of her situation. The lawyer, Mr. Adkins, had confirmed that the land legally belonged to her, not her father. But contesting Turner's claim and by extension, Wade's would require going to court in Cheyenne, which would cost money she didn't have. Wade was waiting outside as promised, leaning against the wagon. He straightened when he saw her. What did Adkins say? Katherine sighed. The land is legally mine, but fighting for it would cost more than I can afford. Wade nodded, unsurprised. Katherine, I want you to know that I never intended to take advantage of your situation. When I bought that contract from Turner, my only thought was getting you away from him. And the land, she challenged. Yes, I wanted the land, he admitted. I've been trying to buy it for 2 years, but your father refused to sell. It's good grazing land and it has the best water access in the area. He paused, but I would never have used you to get it. Katherine studied his face, looking for any sign of deception but finding none. I believe you, she said finally, but it doesn't change the fact that I have no way to claim what's rightfully mine. What if I help you? Wade suggested. I could loan you the money for the court costs. Katherine raised an eyebrow. And why would you do that? If I win, you lose the land. Because it's the right thing to do, Wade said simply, and because he hesitated. Because I care about what happens to you, Katherine. The sincerity in his voice made her heart skip a beat, but before she could respond, a familiar and unwelcome voice interrupted them. Well, isn't this touching? They turned to see Silas Turner approaching, flanked by the same two men from earlier. His hand rested casually on his holstered pistol. I told you this wasn't over, Wilson, Turner said. I want my money and the girl. Wade stepped in front of Katherine protectively. We've been through this, Turner. The deal stands. Turner smiled unpleasantly. I've been thinking about that. If the land wasn't Hayes's to gamble, then our transaction wasn't valid, which means the girl is still mine by right of that first agreement. There is no right to another person, Wade growled. The courts might disagree, Turner said. Especially when they learn that you've been keeping her at your ranch unchaperoned. Quite scandalous, wouldn't you say? Katherine felt her cheeks burn with indignation. I work for Mr. Wilson. There's nothing scandalous about it, Turner laughed. A pretty young woman living with a bachelor. People talk, Miss Hayes. Your reputation is already in tatters. Wade's hands clenched into fists. Say one more word about Miss Hayes and you'll be picking your teeth up off the street. Turner's hand moved to his gun. Is that a threat, Wilson? The tension in the air was palpable as the two men faced each other. Katherine glanced around desperately and noticed the sheriff approaching from down the street. Sheriff Morris, she called, relief flooding through her. All eyes turned to the approaching lawman, a tall, graying man with a no-nonsense expression. What's the trouble here? Sheriff Morris asked, his hand resting on his own weapon. Just a business disagreement, Sheriff, Turner said smoothly, moving his hand away from his pistol. Business disagreements don't usually look like men about to draw on each other in the middle of the street, the sheriff observed dryly. Wade explained the situation briefly, including Katherine's visit to the lawyer. Sheriff Morris listened thoughtfully. Sounds to me like this is a matter for the courts, not for gunplay in my town, he said finally. Turner, I suggest you pursue legal channels if you have a grievance. Turner's face darkened, but he nodded stiffly. Of course, Sheriff, I'm a law-abiding citizen. He shot Wade a venomous look. This isn't over, Wilson. As Turner and his men walked away, Sheriff Morris turned to Katherine. Miss Hayes, I knew your mother, good woman. If that land is rightfully yours, I'd like to see you get it. He tipped his hat. In the meantime, be careful. Turner doesn't take kindly to losing. After the sheriff left, Katherine let out a shaky breath. He threatened you because of me. Turner's been looking for reasons to come after me for years, Wade said dismissively. This just gives him an excuse. Katherine wasn't convinced. Maybe I should go somewhere else. I don't want to bring trouble to your door. And go where? Wade asked. Turner would only follow. At least at the ranch we have Daniel and the other hands. He placed a gentle hand on her arm. Katherine, please, come back to the ranch. We'll figure this out together. The warmth of his touch and the concern in his eyes weakened her resolve. All right, she agreed, but only until we can sort out this land business. As they drove back to the ranch, Katherine couldn't help wondering what would happen once the land issue was resolved. Would Wade still want her around? And more troublingly, why did the thought of leaving him make her heart ache? The following weeks brought changes to the Wilson ranch. Wade hired 2 more hands and made sure someone was always keeping watch. Katherine continued her duties, but there was a new tension between her and Wade, not anger, but a heightened awareness that made simple interactions feel charged with unspoken emotion. One afternoon, Katherine was hanging laundry when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Her heart raced until she recognized Daniel riding hard toward the house. Miss Katherine, he called, is the boss here? He rode out to check the north fence, she replied, alarmed by the urgency in Daniel's voice. What's wrong? Fire, Daniel gasped, in the east pasture. Turner's men were seen riding away. Katherine's blood ran cold. How bad? Bad enough. The men are trying to contain it, but with this wind. Daniel shook his head grimly. I'll find Wade, Katherine said, already moving toward the barn. You get back and help the others. She saddled a horse with shaking hands, her mind racing. The east pasture bordered her family's land, the disputed property. This was no coincidence. Katherine rode hard toward the north fence line, scanning the horizon for Wade. She spotted him after about 15 minutes, riding along the fence with his back to her. "Wade," she shouted, pushing her horse faster. He turned at the sound of her voice, his expression changing from surprise to concern as she galloped toward him. "Katherine, what's wrong?" "Fire in the east pasture," she gasped when she reached him. "Daniel says Turner's men were seen nearby." Wade's face hardened. "Are the men fighting it?" "Yes, but Daniel says it's spreading fast with the wind." Without another word, Wade wheeled his horse around and took off toward the east pasture, Katherine following close behind. They smelled the smoke before they saw the flames, an acrid tang that grew stronger as they crested a hill and saw the disaster unfolding below. A wall of fire stretched across the dry grass of the east pasture, black smoke billowing into the sky. Wade's ranch hands and neighboring farmers fought the blaze with wet blankets and shovels, trying to create fire breaks. "It's jumping to your land," Katherine cried, pointing to where flames had begun to lick at the grass on what should have been her property. Wade's expression was grim as they rode down to join the firefighters. For hours, they battled the blaze alongside 24 men, beating back flames, digging fire breaks, and hauling water from a nearby creek. The sun was setting by the time they finally contained the fire, everyone soot-stained and exhausted. "We lost about 50 acres, one of the hands reported to Wade, and some of the fence line, but we saved the herd." Wade nodded wearily, his face streaked with ash and sweat. "Good work, all of you. Head back to the ranch and get some rest." As the men dispersed, Katherine approached Wade, who stood staring at the charred remains of his pasture. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "This is because of me, because of the land dispute." Wade turned to her, his expression fierce. "This is because Turner is a snake who can't stand not getting his way. It's not your fault. But if I hadn't come to your ranch, then Turner would have found some other reason to come after me," Wade interrupted. "We've been rivals since I first came to Wyoming." Katherine wasn't convinced, but she could see that Wade was in no mood to argue. They rode back to the ranch in silence, both too tired for conversation. At the house, Katherine insisted on drawing a bath for Wade first while she prepared a simple meal. After he had bathed and eaten, she took her turn in the tub, washing away the day's ash and fear. She had just changed into a clean dress and was combing out her damp hair when a knock came at her bedroom door. "Katherine," Wade's voice came through the wood. "May I speak with you?" She opened the door to find him standing there, his hair still damp from his bath, wearing a clean shirt and trousers. The sight of him made her heart beat faster. "I've been thinking," he said without preamble. "Turner won't stop coming after us after you until this land business is settled." "I know," Katherine said quietly, "but I don't see what we can do. I can't afford to fight him in court." "There might be another way," Wade said hesitantly. "A compromise." Katherine raised an eyebrow. "What kind of compromise?" Wade took a deep breath. "What if we were to combine our interests?" "I don't understand." "If we were married," Wade said carefully, "the land would legally become part of my ranch. Turner couldn't contest it without going through both of us." Katherine stared at him, stunned. "Are you proposing to me?" Wade ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking uncomfortable. "It would be a marriage of convenience, of course, to protect the land and you." He hesitated. "You'd have your own room, just as you do now. Nothing would have to change except on paper." Katherine felt as though she'd been doused with cold water. A marriage of convenience, of course. What had she expected, that he had developed feelings for her? "I see," she said, struggling to keep her voice even. "And what happens to the land in this arrangement?" "It would be yours," Wade said quickly. "I'd draw up papers ensuring that. We could even split the profits from it." Katherine nodded slowly, trying to think past the ache in her chest. It was a practical solution. She would be safe from Turner, and she would retain rights to her mother's land. It made perfect sense, except for the fact that she had, without meaning to, fallen in love with Wade Wilson, and he was offering her a business arrangement. "May I have some time to think about it?" she asked. Wade nodded. "Of course, it's a big decision." He hesitated, then added softly, "I would treat you well, Katherine. You would want for nothing." "Except love," she thought but didn't say. "Thank you, I'll give you my answer tomorrow." After Wade left, Katherine sat by her window staring out at the moonlit landscape. She had come to the Wilson Ranch as a woman with nothing, no home, no family, no future. Now she was being offered security, protection, and a share in her mother's land. It was more than she could have hoped for 2 months ago, but somewhere along the way her heart had betrayed her by wanting more. She had begun to imagine a life with Wade that went beyond cooking his meals and keeping his house. She had begun to dream of a real marriage, one built on love and respect, not convenience. As dawn broke, Katherine had made her decision. She found Wade in the kitchen, drinking coffee and studying a map of his property spread out on the table. "Good morning," she said softly. He looked up, his expression unreadable. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" "Not really," she admitted. "I was thinking about your proposal." Wade set down his coffee cup, giving her his full attention. "And I'll marry you," Katherine said, "but I have conditions." Wade's eyebrows rose slightly. "I'm listening." "First, I want legal documentation that the Hayes land remains in my name even after marriage." Wade nodded. "That's fair. What else?" Katherine took a deep breath. "Second, I want a real marriage, not just on paper." Wade's expression froze. "Katherine, let me finish," she interrupted. "I'm not asking for intimacy if you don't want it. But I won't enter a marriage knowing it's just a business arrangement. If we do this, we do it properly as husband and wife, building a life together." Wade studied her for a long moment, his eyes searching hers. "You deserve someone who can give you his whole heart, Katherine, and you can't." She asked, trying to keep the hurt from her voice. Wade stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "My wife died 6 years ago," he said quietly. "During childbirth, our son lived only a few hours." Katherine's heart ached for him. "I'm so sorry, Wade, I didn't know." "No one here does except my sister." He turned to face her. "I came west to escape those memories, to build something new, and I promised myself I would never put another woman at risk." "At risk," Katherine repeated. "Childbirth is dangerous," Wade said, his voice tight. "I watched Sarah die in pain, unable to help her. I won't go through that again. I won't put another woman I care about through that." The implication of his words that he cared about her wasn't lost on Katherine. "There are ways to prevent children," she said softly. Wade's eyes widened slightly at her boldness. "Those methods aren't always reliable. Nothing in life is without risk," Katherine countered. "Including being alone." Wade was silent for a long moment. "You're asking a lot, Katherine." "I'm asking for a chance at happiness for both of us." She moved closer to him. "I'm not Sarah, and whatever happened to her wasn't your fault." "You don't know that." "I know you, Wade Wilson," Katherine said firmly. "I know you're kind and honorable, and that you would never intentionally harm anyone you cared about." She paused. "If you truly don't have feelings for me, then say so, and I'll accept your offer of a marriage in name only, but don't hide behind fear." Wade stared at her, conflict evident in his eyes. Slowly, he reached out and touched her cheek, his calloused fingers surprisingly gentle. "You are the bravest woman I've ever known, Katherine Hayes." Katherine leaned into his touch, her heart pounding. "Is that a yes?" Instead of answering, Wade bent his head and kissed her softly, his lips warm against hers. Katherine closed her eyes, savoring the feeling she had imagined for weeks. When they parted, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "I can't promise I won't be afraid," he whispered, "but I can promise to try to build a real marriage with you." Katherine smiled, joy blooming in her chest. "That's all I ask." "There's something else you should know," Wade said, drawing back slightly. "When I was in town yesterday, I spoke with Sheriff Morris. He's willing to testify that your father was not of sound mind when he gambled away the land. Between that and the lawyer's confirmation that the deed was in your mother's name, we have a strong case against Turner." "You did that for me?" Katherine asked, touched. "I did it for us," Wade corrected. "If we're to start a life together, I want it built on solid ground." The sound of hoofbeats interrupted them. Wade moved to the window, his expression darkening. "Turner," he said grimly, "and he's brought more men this time." Katherine joined him at the window. Silas Turner approached with 5 riders, all armed. "Stay inside," Wade ordered, reaching for his gun belt. "No," Katherine said firmly. "This concerns me as much as you. We face him together." Wade looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. "Together, then." They walked out onto the porch as Turner and his men pulled up in the yard. Daniel and the other ranch hands emerged from the bunkhouse, shotguns in hand. "That's far enough, Turner," Wade called. "State your business and then get off my land." Turner smiled unpleasantly. "I've come for what's mine, Wilson, the Hayes property and the girl." "Miss Hayes doesn't belong to anyone," Wade replied coldly, "and the land is legally hers, not yours or her father's." "We'll let a judge decide that," Turner said. "I've filed papers in Cheyenne. Until then, I'm taking possession of the disputed property." "You're not taking anything," Wade stated flatly. "My men and I will defend what's ours." Turner's smile widened. "I was hoping you'd say that." He nodded to his men, who spread out, hands hovering near their weapons. Katherine stepped forward. "There's no need for violence, Mr. Turner. Mr. Wilson and I are to be married. The land will be part of the Wilson Ranch, legally and properly." Turner's expression faltered for a moment before hardening again. "A convenient arrangement. Too bad it won't hold up in court when I prove Hayes had no right to give you away in the first place." "My father didn't give me away," Katherine said evenly. "I chose to come here. I chose Mr. Wilson, and Sheriff Morris has already provided a statement regarding my father's mental state during your supposed poker game." For the first time, uncertainty flashed across Turner's face. "Morris has no authority. Morris has been sheriff here for 15 years, Wade interrupted. "His testimony carries weight. You played cards with a drunk who wasn't in his right mind, Turner. No judge will uphold that contract." The tension in the yard was thick enough to cut. Katherine held her breath, watching Turner's face as he calculated his options. "This isn't worth killing over, Turner," Wade said quietly. "Not for you, not for me. Let it go." For a long moment Turner didn't move, then slowly he nodded. "Perhaps you're right, Wilson, but this isn't over." "I'll see you in court." "We'll be there," Wade assured him. As Turner and his men rode away, Katherine released the breath she'd been holding. "Do you think he'll really take this to court?" Wade sighed. "Maybe. But with Morris's statement and the lawyer's confirmation about the deed, he doesn't have much of a case." He turned to her with a small smile. "Besides, I think Turner's more interested in causing trouble than actually acquiring more land. He has plenty already." Katherine nodded, feeling the tension drain from her body. "So, about that wedding," Wade's smile widened as he took her hand. "How soon can you be ready?" They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Cottonwood Springs. Katherine wore a new blue dress that Wade's sister had helped her choose on a shopping trip to Cheyenne. Wade looked handsome in a black suit, his usually tanned face slightly pale with nervousness. Sheriff Morris gave Katherine away, a duty he accepted with solemn pride in memory of her mother. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, with Wade's sister and Daniel serving as witnesses. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Wade hesitated only briefly before leaning down to kiss his bride. It was a gentle, proper kiss for public viewing, but the promise in his eyes made Katherine blush. Their wedding supper was a community affair, with neighbors bringing dishes to share and offering congratulations. Even Katherine's father appeared briefly, sober and seemingly remorseful, though he left before Katherine could speak with him at length. As the celebration wound down and guests began to leave, Wade's sister pulled Katherine aside. "I haven't seen my brother this happy in years," she said warmly. "Thank you for bringing light back into his life," Katherine blushed. "He's brought light to mine as well." Later that night, alone in the house that was now truly her home, Katherine changed into the nightgown Wade's sister had insisted on buying her, a beautiful creation of white cotton trimmed with lace, far finer than anything Katherine had ever owned. A soft knock came at the bedroom door, their bedroom now, not just hers. "Katherine," Wade's voice was hesitant. "May I come in?" "Yes," she called, her heart fluttering with anticipation and nervousness. Wade entered, wearing only his trousers and undershirt, his feet bare. He stopped when he saw her, his eyes widening. "You look beautiful," he said softly. Katherine smiled shyly. "Your sister has good taste." Wade crossed the room slowly, as if giving her time to change her mind. When he reached her, he gently took her hands in his. "I want you to know," he said seriously, "that if you're not ready, we can wait. Being married doesn't mean we have to." Katherine silenced him with a kiss more bold than she had ever been. When they parted, both were breathless. "I don't want to wait," she whispered. "I want to be your wife in every way." Wade's eyes darkened as he drew her close. "I thought I would never feel this way again," he murmured against her hair. "You've brought me back to life, Katherine Wilson." "And you've given me a life I never dared dream of," she replied, lifting her face for his kiss. As Wade's lips met hers, Katherine knew with certainty that this was no marriage of convenience. This was the beginning of a love story neither of them had expected but both now embraced with their whole hearts. The weeks following their wedding were the happiest of Katherine's life. She and Wade settled into married life with surprising ease, learning each other's habits and preferences, building routines together, and discovering the joys of waking up in each other's arms. True to his word, Wade had drawn up legal documents ensuring that the Hayes property remained in Katherine's name, though they managed it as part of the larger Wilson Ranch. The land that had caused so much conflict now served as common ground between them, with Katherine taking particular interest in the small apple orchard her mother had planted years ago. As autumn approached, bringing cooler temperatures and golden light to the Wyoming landscape, Katherine received unexpected news from town. Her father had left Cottonwood Springs, reportedly heading east to stay with relatives in Ohio. He had left her a letter with Sheriff Morris. Katherine read it alone on the porch, tears falling as she absorbed her father's clumsy apology for his failings and his blessing for her marriage. He acknowledged his drinking problem and promised to seek help. The letter wasn't enough to heal all the wounds, but it was a start in acknowledgement of the pain he had caused. Wade found her there, still holding the letter, tears drying on her cheeks. "Bad news?" he asked gently, sitting beside her. Katherine handed him the letter. "Not bad, just complicated." Wade read it silently, then folded it carefully and returned it to her. "Do you forgive him?" "I'm trying to," Katherine said honestly. "He's still my father despite everything." Wade nodded, putting his arm around her shoulders. "Forgiveness takes time, there's no rush." Katherine leaned against him, grateful for his understanding. "If he hadn't gambled me away that day, I might never have met you." Wade chuckled. "I suppose I should thank him for that, at least." "We should invite him to visit," Katherine suggested. "If he gets sober, maybe next summer." "Whatever you want," Wade agreed, kissing the top of her head. "This is your home. Your family is my family now." As winter settled over the ranch, bringing snow and long evenings by the fire, Katherine and Wade grew even closer. They read to each other from Wade's small library, planned improvements for the ranch in the coming year, and sometimes simply sat in comfortable silence, enjoying each other's company. In January, as a blizzard howled outside, Katherine shared news that she had been suspecting for weeks. "Wade," she said as they lay in bed, the warmth of their bodies a contrast to the frigid air beyond their blankets, "I'm with child." She felt him tense beside her, his arm tightening around her waist. For a long moment he was silent, and Katherine held her breath, remembering his fears. "Are you certain?" he finally asked, his voice tight. "Yes," Katherine replied softly. "I've missed my monthly twice now, and I've been feeling queasy in the mornings." Wade sat up, lighting the lamp beside the bed. In the golden glow, his face was a mask of conflicting emotions, joy warring with fear. "Katherine, he broke off, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know if I can do this again." Katherine sat up as well, taking his hands in hers. "You can, Wade, we can. This isn't the same as before." "How do you know that?" he demanded, his voice raw with old pain. "How do you know you won't?" He couldn't finish the sentence. "I don't," Katherine admitted. "Life offers no guarantees, but I'm strong and healthy, and we have each other." She placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "This baby is part of both of us, a new beginning." Wade's expression softened as he looked at where his hand rested. "A new beginning," he repeated quietly. "Are you happy?" Katherine asked, suddenly uncertain. Wade looked up, and the love in his eyes took her breath away. "Terrified," he admitted. "But yes, happy too." He pulled her close, holding her as if she might disappear. "I love you, Katherine Wilson, more than I ever thought possible." "I love you too," she whispered against his chest, "and I promise you we're going to be all right." As the months passed, and Katherine's body changed with the growing life inside her, Wade's fears gradually gave way to cautious excitement. He built a cradle with his own hands, carved from the same maple tree that had provided wood for their bed frame. He consulted with the doctor in town about the best care for Katherine and ordered books on childbirth and infant care from back east. Katherine found his concern touching, if sometimes amusing. "The baby won't arrive for another 3 months," she reminded him one day as he insisted on carrying a basket of laundry that she could have managed easily. "3 months isn't so long," Wade replied, setting the basket down for her next to the clothesline. "And you need to rest more." Katherine laughed. "If I rest any more, I'll take root like one of my mother's apple trees." Wade smiled, his hand automatically moving to her rounded belly. "I just want you both to be safe." "We are," Katherine assured him, covering his hand with hers. As if in agreement, the baby kicked against their joined hands. Wade's eyes widened in wonder. That never stops being amazing. By early summer, Katherine's time was drawing near. The doctor had visited the previous week and pronounced both mother and child healthy and well-positioned. Wade had arranged for Daniel's young sister to come stay at the ranch to help with household duties and assist during the birth. On a warm June evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Katherine felt the first pains. She was in the kitchen, preparing supper, when a sharp cramp made her gasp and grip the edge of the table. "Wade," she called, knowing he was in the yard just outside. He appeared instantly, as if he'd been waiting for her call. "Is it time?" Katherine nodded, both excited and apprehensive. "I think so." What followed was a long night of increasingly intense labor. Wade stayed by her side throughout, wiping her brow, holding her hand, and whispering encouragement when the pain became almost unbearable. "You can do this, Katherine," he said again and again. "You're the strongest person I know." As dawn broke over the eastern hills, painting the bedroom in soft golden light, their daughter was born a healthy, red-faced infant with a strong cry and a shock of dark hair like her father's. "She's perfect," the doctor declared as he placed the swaddled baby in Katherine's arms. "Congratulations to you both." Katherine looked down at the tiny face, overwhelmed with love. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." Wade sat on the edge of the bed, his face a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and joy as he gently touched his daughter's cheek. "She's beautiful," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Like her mother." The doctor packed up his bag, giving instructions for Katherine's recovery and the baby's care. Before leaving, he paused at the door. "You did well, Wilson. Most men can't handle the birthing room." Wade didn't take his eyes off his wife and daughter. "I wouldn't have been anywhere else." After the doctor left, Wade stretched out carefully beside Katherine on the bed, his arm around her shoulders as they both gazed at their child. "What shall we call her?" Katherine asked softly. Wade considered for a moment. "Sarah," he suggested, "after my first wife." "And Elizabeth, after your mother." Katherine felt tears prick her eyes at his thoughtfulness. "Sarah Elizabeth Wilson," she tried the name out. "It's perfect." Wade pressed a kiss to her temple. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For showing me that love is worth the risk." He looked down at their daughter, sleeping peacefully in Katherine's arms. "For giving me a family again." Katherine leaned against him, exhausted but happier than she had ever been. "You gave me a family too," she reminded him. "When my father gave me away in anger, you promised to love me, and you have." Wade's arms tightened around her. "I'll love you until my last breath, Katherine Wilson, you and our daughter and any other children who may come along." Katherine smiled at the thought of more children filling their home with laughter and life. "Is that a promise, Mr. Wilson?" Wade kissed her softly, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby. "That, Mrs. Wilson, is a solemn vow." As the morning sun streamed through the bedroom window, illuminating the small family on the bed, Katherine thought of how far she had come from that terrible day when her father had traded her away like property. What had begun in anger and desperation had transformed into something beautiful, a love that had healed them both and now extended to the tiny life they had created together. Outside, the Wyoming wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of summer and the promise of many more seasons to come. On the bedside table lay the deed to the Hayes property, now permanently part of the Wilson Ranch, a symbol of two lives joined as one. Katherine Wilson, once given away in anger, had found her true home in the arms of a cowboy who had kept his promise to love her until his last breath, and beyond.